Hi, Barry and Bill. We're together here at BioFuture 2022. I'm so glad to have you here. And I'm here with the CSO and CEO of Phylloceuticals, a really exciting new company that we're going to talk about today. So, Barry, tell us at a high level, what is Phylloceuticals all about?
Well, Phylloceuticals is a company that's bringing a very well tried and true technology that's been around for 30 years to the forefront, and that is making biologics in plant cells, in plants, not in mammalian cells or bacterial cells.
So I've heard you talk about this little plant as a bioreactor. What is actually going on inside, if you could talk to us non-scientists?
Well, if you look at a picture of a plant cell and you look at a picture of an animal cell, you'll see they both have all the same machinery. In fact, the plant has more because it can make its own energy from sunlight and minerals.
Oh, okay.
So we just harvest that biomechanical system to make human proteins using genetic engineering instead of having to grow animal cells.
Wow. So, Bill, you got involved in this from the perspective of a career in manufacturing, engineering, construction. Talk to me a little bit about the issues this solves from a speed to market, drug discovery to, what's going on here?
Yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. As we go through this, it seems like we've solved more and more issues that I know in my career we've kind of been going out after the holy grail in the industry. We've been looking at disposables, single-use systems, modular, flexible systems. We've been talking about it forever for mammalian cell culture, and in mammalian cell culture, you've got this bioreactor with all the instrumentation and everything around it, and then you've got all the feeds, you've got media feeds, everything's sterile, all the outside utilities coming together, feeding that system, and all of that has got to be validated. All of that you've got to have quality control. You've got to make sure we don't have contamination batch to batch. And Barry has introduced me to this some time ago. These plants, this little 8-gram bioreactor that basically has all of the above in it already because it does that itself. It can take stuff that's not sterile, in fact, which a plant normally does, utilize what it needs to produce for itself, and now we're saying it can produce biologics and medicines for the world.
Wow.
And that little bioreactor at the end is tossed out once we take out of it what we want, and you start again, so no cross-contamination from bioreactor to bioreactor, no sterilization, clean in place of a bioreactor, all the supporting systems are there, and all of that gets put into one, obviously makes it one heck of a lot less expensive, also makes it a lot faster to get up and running, a lot less capital expense, and the quality issues associated, as we talked about, are tremendous. So
wow.
It's the truly disposable bioreactor that people have been trying to find for years.
For all these years.
Yeah, but it takes a shift in thinking and a new platform to produce these things on to get you there.
So if this has been around for a while, why hasn't it taken off like crazy? What has been holding this back? Because I notice there's a big surge in acceptability of new platforms since COVID. Is this taking advantage of that? Is there an opening here for this to take off?
Well, there has been, and it's been recognized for many years. DARPA did an enormous project during the H1N1 pandemic to use plants. And like Bill said, and I'll emphasize it again, we only borrowed the plant for 6 days to make a new product.
Wow, 6 days.
So every plant is a generic bioreactor. We don't have to program it, we don't have to clean it, we don't have to do anything to it, we just grow it. And then we hijack the protein-making machinery using genetic engineering for 5 or 6 days, and then we harvest the plant and the product. So we can react as fast as we can make that new genetic information to put into the plant, which takes 10 to 12 days sometimes for
Yeah.
larger protein.
But still a much
Very
abbreviated
compact.
timeline.
So yeah, the pandemic is a wonderful example of how to do that. And we demonstrated that during the H1N1 pandemic.
So
But-
what's next with this? Where is this headed, right? So it sounds like, this could be up and running even in underserved areas of the world. This is a lot easier than the $600 million projects that I'm sure you're well familiar with, Bill. Is that the direction we're heading, where this could be something that is much easier to get up and running for, say, countries that have difficulty with that kind of expense?
Yeah, well, certainly, COVID has opened everyone's eyes to the supply chain issues, of course. So that does help and put a spotlight on what we're talking about doing here and where this goes. Obviously, these, the scalability of this compared to scaling up a typical mammalian cell culture bioreactor, if we want to double it, we put 2 plants instead of 1. So we can do. Not only can we scale it up that easy, but as far as affordability, we can have very small output commercial facilities that are still financially viable and provide at a price point that some of the places in the world that right now can't get medicine could have, and we could have that spread around the world. And think about the fact that, if we had these plants, these facilities, plant-made pharmaceutical facilities in all these different places around the world prior to COVID, and then we said, hey, you know what? We need to come up with a vector for a vaccine for the pandemic. It could be done, and sure, maybe in the U.S. we got there pretty quick, for the first world, but in the third world areas around there, having something like this could really get there a lot faster.
But pharma is notoriously slow to adapt new platforms, and during a crisis-driven event, you get focus on new things. Who thought about baculovirus or mRNA until the COVID pandemic?
2.5 years ago, yeah.
But that also has a very short memory. They don't even remember H1N1, and that infected as many or more people than COVID did.
Yeah.
So we can't live from crisis to crisis because the virus is going to get better and better at what they do. They always do. And it's time to start planning for the future and for the entire planet. That's what drove the recent adaptation of mRNA is because we had to immunize the rest of the planet to preserve ourselves. But we live in a G7 country too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an interesting piece of history.
So what does one of these facilities look like? I mean, I've seen pictures that they seem like there are just thousands and thousands of these 8-gram bioreactors, to use your words, Bill. Can you switch quickly? In other words, once you've made one of these, I would assume the plants grow quickly enough that if you change your target, you could have a very fast changeover.
You always have inventory because you're growing plants constantly.
Okay.
So all it is intervening with the new vector, putting in the new information. So as quick as you can make the new information, you always have bioreactors ready to go.
So isn't that a huge advantage for phytoceuticals? Because I worked in pharma, I know there is just no way to quickly change the course of that ship.
Yeah. And you both know the pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, they are all out there, looking at these huge facilities they're building. And one of the things they're constantly looking at is, especially when they're building it for a new drug, is can we make this flexible so it can work for another drug? There's only a certain amount of flexibility you can put into them that allows it to be changed for another drug that you don't know what it is yet, right?
Yeah.
And if they did change that, there'd be a tremendous expense in capital to do it. It might not cost as much as it cost them to do the first facility, but it's not cheap. And it's not easy to do that. So often, especially if you've got a blockbuster drug, right, you're not going to sit around taking extra time for design and construction to put all these features in.
Just in
to make
case.
it flexible,
Yeah.
just in case. You're building, right? Where here, if you had a product and it, whatever happens, it goes off the market, you decide you're going to pull it off the market, what's your next product? We'll put that into the facility, and certainly the upstream piece of this facility is so generic, those bioreactors are so generic, we'll just go to another product.
That is really exciting. Is there, are there any other issues that plant-based therapeutics platforms like this can solve?
Well, I think there will be, and we will discover new drugs, and we'll discover drugs that mammalian cells can't make because it makes them sick. And you can't have a mammalian bioreactor making that drug. A good example is the interest in using collagen now for breast reconstruction, wound healing, things like that. Where do you get type 1 human collagen other than humans?
Can that be made in plants?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It already is.
Wow.
It's a great example of a very specific drug that can be made in plants better than anywhere else.
Well, this has been really fascinating, guys. I appreciate you spending time with us today, and enjoy the rest of your time at BioFuture.
Thank you very much.